I still remember the day Tessa walked out of our tiny Los Angeles apartment like it was yesterday. She had her red suitcase in one hand and her phone in the other, eyes glued to the screen, as if the digital world already mattered more than I ever could. Back then, I was a struggling cinematographer, shooting wedding videos and short films just to cover rent, while Tessa was chasing fame, posting reels, joining auditions, and dreaming of that one viral spark. We were two dreamers sharing one broken couch and a single cup of ambition, or at least that's what I believed. But the moment followers began trickling into her profile and brands started whispering her name, she began looking at me like I was still stuck in black and white while she'd moved on to 4K color. "You're talented, Jake, but you think too small," she'd say, scrolling through comments that called her perfect. I'd laugh it off and say, "Someone has to hold the camera while you shine." But deep down, every word burned. I watched her transform from my girlfriend into a stranger addicted to validation. Then came Ryan, the self-proclaimed producer with Hollywood connections and a white Tesla that screamed success. Suddenly, our late-night ramen dinners became her old life, and my apartment felt like a waiting room she was desperate to leave. The night she told me she was choosing herself, I didn't fight it. I just stood there in silence as she said fame was her destiny and love would only slow her down. I didn't realize it then, but that moment wasn't an ending. It was ignition, because when the door shut behind Tessa, something in me lit up too, and I swore the next time she saw my name, it would be rolling in the opening credits.
After Tessa left, silence became my new roommate. Her perfume still lingered on the pillow, her makeup brush lay on the sink, and her laughter echoed in the walls like a ghost I couldn't evict. For a few weeks, I spiraled, skipping gigs, ignoring calls, pretending I didn't care while drowning in the kind of loneliness that doesn't make noise but eats everything inside. Then one night, while scrolling mindlessly, I saw her face again, Tessa, smiling under bright lights, sitting next to Ryan on a talk show couch. She was introduced as a rising influencer, and Ryan boasted about his new talent discovery. I didn't even finish the clip. Something in me snapped, but not in anger, in determination. I realized I'd spent years filming other people's dreams while burying my own. So I sold my old camera, maxed out a credit card, and bought a second-hand red digital cinema cam. I stopped doing wedding shoots and started shooting my story. I pitched a short film to a small online channel, a raw piece about ambition, heartbreak, and the cost of chasing validation. It wasn't fancy, just truth wrapped in good lighting. I filmed it in my kitchen, cast myself, and edited for nights without sleep. When it premiered online, I expected a few likes. Instead, it exploded. People called it painfully honest, real, cinematic therapy. Within a month, I had offers from indie studios wanting to collaborate. For the first time, I wasn't behind the camera helping someone else shine. I was the story. But with success came whispers. A streaming platform picked up my short, and suddenly I was in interviews, podcasts, panels. People called me the new voice of real cinema. Meanwhile, Tessa's world seemed louder, but emptier. Sponsored trips, fake smiles, and fewer genuine likes. I didn't stalk her, but sometimes her posts found me, and every time I saw the same thing. She was performing happiness. Then came the day that changed everything. A major network was launching a new reality series about the entertainment world, and they wanted a fresh creative director, someone who understood both fame and authenticity. My short had caught their eye. They gave me full creative control, and when the casting list dropped, I froze. One of the featured influencers? Tessa. I didn't request it, didn't manipulate it, it was just poetic symmetry. Life had set the stage for round 2. On the first shoot day, I arrived early, professional, detached. She walked in late, all smiles and cameras, wearing designer sunglasses and that same perfume. When our eyes met, her smile faltered for half a second,
enough for me to know she recognized the man behind the lens. But this time, I wasn't holding it. I was the one giving directions. "Camera 2, track her entrance," I said, calm and steady. She blinked, pretending it didn't sting, but I could feel the electricity of irony in the air. I wasn't here for revenge. I was here because I earned it. Still, when I saw her look around and realized I'd built the set she was walking through, I felt something inside me settle. Like every sleepless night, every broken moment had finally been justified. And that was just the beginning.
Tessa and I hadn't spoken in over a year, yet when she stood a few feet away on that studio floor, it felt like time had folded in on itself. She looked flawless, as always, hair styled to perfection, lips painted red like confidence itself, but her eyes told another story. They flickered with uncertainty, like she couldn't decide whether to smile or hide. I gave her a polite nod and got back to directing. The cameras rolled, lights flared, and she became the performer again, laughing on cue, striking poses, pretending to be everything she once promised she'd become. But I could see the exhaustion in her movements, the kind that fame can't mask. Between takes, she tried small talk. "Jake, it's been forever. You look different." I smiled without warmth and said, "Success does that." It wasn't meant to hurt her, but it did. For once, I didn't have to explain my worth. My work did it for me. Over the next few weeks, we kept crossing paths. Her interviews, my production meetings, moments that fate seemed to design for poetic discomfort. She'd linger after shoots, asking about my new projects, laughing too long at old memories, as if trying to rewind time. One night, after a late wrap, she finally said it. "You really made it, huh? I always knew you would." I looked at her, searching for sincerity, but all I saw was regret. Not love, not pride, just the quiet grief of realizing she'd bet on the wrong future. That night, I went home and watched her old videos, the ones where she used to record makeup tutorials in our apartment. The background showed the same couch we'd bought together from Craigslist, the same fairy lights I'd strung for her. She had erased me from her captions, but not from the frame. I realized something profound. Tessa hadn't just left me for fame. She left me because she thought fame was safety, validation, love, all rolled into one. But now that I was living the dream she'd chased, I felt none of those things. My success was real, but it was lonely. I had fans, recognition, and money, but at 2 a.m., none of it filled the silence she'd once occupied. The next day, during an emotional episode taping, she stumbled during a take. Tears welled up, and the crew went silent. "Let's cut," I said, walking toward her. "You okay?" She nodded, trying to laugh it off, but her mascara said otherwise. When everyone left for break, she whispered, "You were always the one who believed in me, Jake. I thought I needed the world's validation, but it never felt like yours." I didn't respond. I just looked at her, this woman who once shattered me, and for the first time, I didn't feel anger. I felt closure. Some scars don't fade. They just stop hurting. That night, I wrote something new, a screenplay called The One Who Stayed Behind. It was my truth, disguised as fiction, about love, ambition, and the irony of becoming what someone left you to find. The network loved it. They greenlit it for a limited series. And guess who they wanted to audition for the female lead?
When the casting notice for The One Who Stayed Behind went live, I didn't even look at the names until my assistant dropped the shortlist on my desk. There it was, Tessa Miller. For a second, I just stared at the paper, torn between disbelief and the eerie symmetry of it all. Out of hundreds of actresses, she'd submitted her audition tape for a role that was, ironically, based on her. Life really did have a dark sense of humor. My first instinct was to reject it instantly, but something in me hesitated. Maybe it was curiosity, maybe closure. I approved her audition. The next week, she walked into the studio again. No glitter, no entourage, just her. The confidence she once wore like armor had thinned, replaced by a quiet humility. She greeted the room, then saw me sitting at the end of the table. For a moment, her composure cracked. "You wrote this?" she asked softly. I nodded. "Every word?" The audition began, and as she delivered the lines that mirrored our past, lines about leaving someone for fame only to lose herself in the process, I saw real emotion spill from her eyes. Not acting. Truth. By the end, the room was silent. Even the camera operator had tears in his eyes. When she finished, she looked at me and whispered, "This is your story, isn't it?" I replied, "It's ours. You just inspired the ending." Later that evening, the producers called. "She's incredible," they said. "Raw, vulnerable, exactly what the role needs." I agreed. She got the part. Not out of pity, not out of nostalgia, but because she'd finally become authentic, the one thing she'd never been before. During filming, we worked side by side, but it wasn't like before. The energy had shifted. She respected me now, not as the boyfriend she outgrew, but as the man she couldn't replace. There were moments of quiet conversation, small apologies wrapped in old memories, but I never reopened the door. Some chapters are meant to end, even when the characters meet again. When the show finally aired, it became a phenomenon. Streamed in over 20 countries, winning awards for its realism. In one of the most poetic turns of fate, talk shows invited Tessa and me together to discuss the real-life inspiration behind it. The public loved the irony. I just smiled through every interview, calm and complete. Months later, I was on a flight to New York for another shoot when the flight attendant handed me a magazine. On the cover was Tessa, with the headline, "How I Lost Myself Chasing Fame and Found Redemption Through Art." I read it quietly, and for the first time, I felt proud, not of revenge, but of growth. She had finally understood what I tried to tell her years ago. Fame fades, but authenticity doesn't. That night, when I appeared on a late-night talk show, the host smiled and said, "Jake, you've become quite the sensation. How does it feel knowing your ex watches you on TV now?" The audience laughed, but I just looked into the camera and said, "I don't think she's watching me anymore. I think she's finally watching herself." And as the lights faded and applause filled the studio, I realized that the best revenge isn't making someone regret leaving. It's becoming the person you were always meant to be after they do.